Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
Welcome into the Redbird Report alongside Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Appreciate you guys tuning in today. Cardinals are on a weird stretch right now, T-Bone. I'm going to read you some results from the last 13 games. Some of these good, some of these not so good. These are runs scored by the Cardinals. 8, 6, 6, 8, 8, 5, 9, 7.
Wow,
feel pretty
that's
good.
really good.
What an offense.
Yeah.
Right?
Must be best in the National League.
In their losses, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0.
Oh, that's a roller coaster.
That's your last 13 games of watching the Cardinals. So if you feel exhausted right now, first of all, so does the team. And second of all, dude, I don't know how you couldn't. Like, this team has been the biggest roller coaster ride of emotions that we have felt in a really long time in watching the Cardinals, because the highs are so high. I mean, you leave these games sometimes feeling like the Cardinals will never lose again. Like, how could anybody beat this team? The offense is great. The pitching is so good. The bullpen in June was like the second best in all of Major League Baseball. They're running the bases well. They have gotten back to being the best defense in Major League Baseball again. Like, look at these guys. Youngry all the way. This is going to be amazing. And then you watch them the next day, and it's as if they will never score a run again. And now they've gone, I think, don't check my math on this, T-Bone, I think it's 100 consecutive games against NL Central opponents of not scoring a run. It's a crazy streak. What do you make of them right now? I think they are what their record says they are, which is like a pretty well above 500 team that can fluctuate in their performance day to day. But boy, are they going through a weird stretch right now.
Yeah, they are. And I really circle this to two things. And I think the first one, I mean, you mentioned it. Boy, they could use an off day. I mean, they are just getting battered and bruised. And it's like freak injuries, like Arenado has a helmet fall off while he's running and it jams a finger. Like, okay, I would never have expected that. Wilson Contreras gets drilled by Paul Skeens, which, like, it just happens, right? He's not on purpose. He's trying to ride him up and in, and his filthy 99-mile-an-hour pitch hits him on the hand.
A rare situation where it wasn't Contreras' fault that he got hit.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, it's freak injuries that are really slowing some guys down and creating these nagging injuries for a team that just doesn't have a lot of depth. Like, when you see Jose Fermin, I brought this up on the show last week. When you bring up Jose Fermin as a corresponding move to Jordan Walker, it tells me where your depth is at, right? They just don't have a lot down in the minor leagues to where they can maybe afford to lose one guy. But when you start to lose multiple like Walker and Herrera, then it gets a lot more tougher for them to really replace that with their depth. And I mentioned the other name that is the second reason for me why they are going through these highs and these lows. It's Ivan Herrera's absence. They are missing their most stable bat in the lineup that you can write in pen, hey, this guy's going to potentially come through for us. He's been their best hitter all season long when you look at him. I mean, he still has a 925 OPS on the season. And when you pluck that out of this lineup that has a bunch of really good pieces, but there is no other star bat in there, you're going to see them go through highs and lows, and really lows when they go against left-handed pitching, especially with Walker being added to that injured list. They just don't have enough right-handed bats to help them against lefties. I think those are their two biggest reasons for the struggles. The fact that everybody's getting banged up and the fact that Ivan Herrera is on the IL, it's going to lead to this roller coaster of emotions for this offense.
Yeah, I mentioned some of the losses that the Cardinals have had recently, and it coincides with the guys that you're talking about being out of the lineup. Andrew Heaney, 6 2/3 innings, 3 hits, no earned runs allowed against the Cardinals. It's not what you want. Logan Allen, 6 innings, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, all came on one swing of the bat, which was Nolan Gorman, a 3-run homer. Shota Imanaga comes back from the IL, 5 innings, 1 hit, no earned runs against the Cardinals. Matthew Boyd, good pitcher, 6 innings, 3 hits, no earned runs. Andrew Abbott, again, a really good pitcher, 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, came on a Pozo RBI single. Those 5 starters that I just mentioned have something in common. They all throw with their left arm, and they all went a combined 30 innings, allowed 17 hits, and 4 earned runs against the Cardinals. That is in 5 starts, 4 earned runs allowed. The Cardinals just don't have an answer for lefties right now. They don't. And that's because Ivan Herrera is out of the lineup. It's because Nolan Arenado right now is out of the lineup. It's because Wilson Contreras currently is out of the lineup. It's because some of their lefties have gone cold against left-handed pitchers as well, and they're not sequencing things as well. I mean, we're recording this, full disclosure, on Wednesday morning. Last night we watched the Cardinals. They went up against a fine starting pitcher. A pretty damn good one, actually, in Paul Skeens.
Did you just use fine to describe Paul Skeens?
First guy to ever do that. They hit him pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
The Cardinals offensively, you're never going to believe this because they scored exactly 0 runs. They were good last night offensively. They produced 7 hits. I think it was like 4 walks or something like that. They ended up hitting with a runner in scoring position 13 different times, but the sequencing was off. They only recorded 1 hit in those 13 at-bats with runners in scoring position. You can't win that way. So last night was the situation where you actually had performed pretty well and still it didn't matter. And that was against Paul Skeens, who turns out throws with his right hand. So you were eligible to win that game. I'm not overly concerned about this offense. I think the offense, we have seen enough sample size at this point to say it's really good. Is it top 5 in Major League Baseball? Maybe not. I don't think that they have the home run power to be able to do that. But last time I said that on this podcast, they went out and hit 100 home runs in the weekend. So maybe that'll change. I think this offense has settled in as a top 12 offense in baseball. And that's good enough when you get the requisite pitching. And there have been times where the Cardinals have had decent starting pitching. And other times, and this is when you get these dry spells, where the pitching doesn't look so good. And Eric Fedde goes out there and gets absolutely shelled. Or you see a guy like Miles Michaelis. He's had his ups and downs this season. Palante looked really good last night. 7 innings. I think it's the 4th time this year that Palante has gone at least 7 innings in a start. He's had some real moments this season. And he's had some bad ones, some stinkers where he just can't get guys out. He doesn't have swing and miss stuff. And balls get put in play. They find holes. And suddenly you've allowed 7 earned runs in 5 innings. So this is a team that, despite the wild ride that they take you on, I think we've got a pretty good read right now, T-Bone, on where they're at. So for me, my level of concern about the offense, I know some are freaking out right now, it's like a 3, because I think we have a pretty good idea of where they're at. But you're right. They desperately need an off day. And more importantly, they need this all-star break, man.
Yeah.
They need 3 or 4 days to just chill. And most of them are not going to be invited to the All-Star game this year. So just go to Tahiti for a few days. Just don't do anything. Do not pick up a baseball bat. Take your mind off of baseball. They have been going through a grind in the month of June. They've had very few off days. They've had multiple doubleheaders. They've still played, I think it's 6 doubleheaders so far this year. They just need to get away from baseball. But before they can do that, they've still got, 10 days that they have to go out there. And if you could go around 500 in these next 10 days, I think as a Cardinals fan, you got to feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I would agree. And to your concern level on the Cardinals, that's about where I am with the offense, because we've seen now part of the reason for the ebbs and flows here and kind of their good June, I would say, where they were about 500, is the fact that the offense, to me, is the one that raises their ceiling. We've talked about this before. So when the offense kind of goes through these weird ebbs and flows while they're dealing with injuries, the pitching at times is not going to be able to hold it up. Because if there was one unit that I was convinced, A, I thought was going to be bad, but B, if you would have said, hey, what part of the Cardinals is going to have the biggest roller coaster this season, I think we all would have answered the starting pitching. And I would think it's fair to say it's kind of been that. It hasn't had as many lows as I think we were expecting, but when you don't have the offense that can really rake and get you about 4 runs a game, like last night, the Paul Skeens one is a perfect example of this. Yeah, they did a pretty good job. They got him out in 5 innings. They couldn't come up with the one big hit, and you're unable to win that ball game. And it is all because they're still missing a bunch of key pieces. And like today, you mentioned we're recording before this Pirates game on Wednesday. Their lineup includes Jose Fermin in it, right? And he was in it as the designated hitter yesterday.
Yeah.
So you're really seeing their depth being tested. And in this stretch, sure, you've got Washington, that's not a great team. You've got the Braves, who to me are not a great team. They are more name than they are bite.
They're bad.
Yeah, they're not a good baseball team. I think you're right still, though, because of what you're seeing from this team. It is self-explanatory as to what's going wrong with them. I think 500 is totally okay to settle with in the stretch. If they were healthy, I would say, hey, you got to win 2 or 3 against Washington. You got to win 2 or 3 against the Braves. And if you really want any hope about winning the division, you got to take 2 or 3 from the Cubs. At this point, I'm with you. They just need to get to the All-Star break and remain as healthy as possible getting there.
So they do have issues with lefties, and that's a real thing. And my concern level on that is like a 7. I don't really know what the fix is there in the current iteration of the Cardinals lineup. I don't think they're going to do this. I think it's very unlikely. But man, Joe Pozo is like one of your best hitters right now, and he almost never sees the lineup unless he's behind the plate. If you can find a way as the manager to get him in there as a DH, even on days where you have Pages behind the plate, I know that's concerning because, hey, man, if something happens to Pages, now you potentially lose your DH, and they don't like doing that. I think it's something you have to try. And they don't have a ton of games coming up against lefties, but like Matthew Boyd's on the mound starting this weekend against the Cardinals on ESPN. That's a game that I would put Joe Pozo as a legitimate DH option for me. And does that fix all of the things that are plaguing this offense? No, of course not. They've got bigger issues right now, but he's somebody that I think you want to get in your lineup against left-handed pitchers right now. Beyond that, you just need guys to start playing better. It's a simple thing to say and a harder thing to accomplish for them, but man, you need Donnie to get back to what he was. You need Victor Scott to get back to what he was at the beginning of the season and what he had started to come around to there for a little while as well. They just need their dudes to start playing like dudes again. And for, Herrera, Newt, Arenado, Contreras, for those guys to get back to 100% health-wise.
Yeah, I would say my concern level is probably at a 5 on the, hey, do they need a right-handed bat against lefties? Because I think Herrera is going to answer quite a bit of their problems when he comes back. But I still, even though I say it's a 5, to me it's still on the need list, right? When it comes to the trade deadline, they will still need to look at acquiring that, but I
agree, but the problem is they still have a month before they get to the deadline, man, and they've got to make sure they're in position to buy, and I don't think we're going to see Herrera prior to that.
So, and that's where I was going to go, is because I just know how Ollie operates, I don't think you can just hope that he's going to put Pozo as the DH, even though I'm willing to do it because I agree it is worth the risk at this point of if something does happen to Paz, okay, fine, then we have to play an old school National League ball game. I'm okay with that. It's clear Ollie's not. So if I'm the front office, I think they need to operate in a way that is, okay, we need to help this roster, the Major League roster. And what I think they need to do is bring up Luke and Baker. I think that way you can bring in somebody that can be the DH that Ollie will be willing to use. I mean, you look at Baker's numbers down the minor leagues, he's got an 896 OPS against lefties. Why do his numbers look bad? Well, because he's got to face righties, who he's got a 626 OPS against. He is a very splitty hitter, and his whole job coming into the year was supposed to be this right-handed bat that comes off the bench for the Cardinals. So I would just say replace Fermin on this roster and put Luke and Baker in that spot because you've got JC that has the flexibility around the infield. I still keep Garrett Hampson on this roster as a guy that provides the flexibility in the outfield and on the infield as well.
You've still got Gorman as well.
You still got Gorman as well. I kind of was writing him in my head as like the starter right now with all the injuries.
Yeah, Donnie, though. Donnie, Gorman, you add in to JC, Arenado. You're got
totally
your infield
covered. And you're covered in the outfield as well. You don't really need Fermin on this roster. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do the thing, which is, hey, he's been really hot in the minor leagues. Can it carry over? And to his credit, I think he had a 5-game hitting streak prior to last night's game. But, I think you need a little pop, right? This team could use some power, and Baker can provide that. A guy that's slugging .479 against lefties. I don't get their hesitancy not to have him up here. And I think it's all just because of flexibility. But I don't think they need flexibility because of Hampson being able to play both the infield and the outfield. You mentioned Donovan and Gorman have decent flexibility. I mentioned Hampson. Who's the one I'm forgetting? So JC's got flexibility on the infield.
And he's apparently, by the way, working in the outfield now.
Whoa.
Yeah, who could have seen it coming?
Nothing like trying to learn a new position at the big leagues, but okay. But you don't need Fermin for his flexibility, and he's in the outfield today. So I think it's okay to just say, hey, we're going to have this one spot, and it's basically just a pure, hey, this guy is a guy that comes off the bench, starts against lefties, and comes off late in games for high leverage. I don't get why they don't want Luke and Baker up here.
I think some of this depends on Jordan Walker and the plan with him, because if Walker is close, okay, theoretically speaking, at least, he could be that right-handed outfield bat that we're talking about, right? I don't know that he actually is that right now in his career, but he could be, again, theoretically, in for this roster. And when he returns, you probably send Fermin down as the corresponding move there. And then you don't want to lack flexibility with like Hampson, who can play in the outfield or the infield. He does provide some of that for you, unless JC can do that for you, which would be the ideal scenario, which is why he should have been working in the outfield all along. But I digress. There was a report, though, from Derek Gould overnight that said Walker is going to meet up with the club in Pittsburgh, make sure that everything's checking out medically, and then head back down to Memphis, where he's expected to spend a little bit of time down there on a rehab assignment. I have no issues with that whatsoever. That sounds great to me. Get him every day at bats, get his mind right, like get him back on track offensively, because he clearly doesn't have those opportunities as an everyday player here when Lars Nootbaar is playing for you regularly when healthy, and when Alec Burleson is playing for you regularly in the outfields as well. And then Donovan has been getting some more opportunities out there because Gorman's getting the chance at second base. Cool. Good with all of that. If you're going to do that, that's where the opportunity does exist for Luke and Baker. I think they're almost tied together. Like if Walker is here, Baker is probably not. If Walker is not here, though, that seems to be their plan, dude, get Baker up here like today. Let's go ahead and get this bad boy done. Or at a minimum, tomorrow you've got the off day. Going into that series against the Cubs, let's see it. Let's see what it looks like down the stretch. And if it stinks, if you decide, you know what, this doesn't work for us, well, the roster already ain't working real well for you. Yeah. So you're in a situation then that you basically are in right now, and you have the upside of a guy that can, mash lefties with a 900 OPS. If nothing else, T-Bone, all I ask is that they treat his spot on the roster like they treat some of these relievers, where you call them up for a day.
Yeah.
And against Matthew Boyd, can we just get him in the lineup? Just for that day, you send somebody else down, call him up, Luke and Baker up, and say, hey, Baker, your job today, you're not playing on Saturday in AAA. You're just going to chill out, and you're going to get on a plane on Saturday night and meet us in Chicago for Sunday's game, and you are going to game plan like crazy to go mash this dude. And go out there and hit a homer at Wrigley, have a day, and we'll all look back on it and be like, man, you remember that day that Luke and Baker came up for 24 hours and he mashed Matthew Boyd? That was great. That's my hope. If nothing else, that they can do that. Will they do it? Probably not, but that's my dream.
I like that dream. I could get in on that. The thing that I hope they don't do, and I'm getting very frustrated by the fact that they're going to do it, just sitting here in this chair, is say, hey, Walker's the right-handed bat we're looking for. Because in 237 plate appearances in his career, he is very splitty. He is a 638 OPS in his career, hitting 210 for all my batting average friends out there against left-handed pitching. He's not a guy that is a platoon bat against lefties. If you wanted to make an argument of, hey, in his career, we like him against right-handers, okay, that's fine because he's technically 7% above league average in his career against right-handed pitching. Not against lefties, though. So he can't be the answer for the Cardinals, especially while Herrera is out of, well, hey, look at this. Here comes our reinforcement. We finally have Walker to be that bat. And even if they do try to make that argument, I still think there's a role for Luke and Baker on the team. Because I would say, Walker, let's first replace Baker with Fermin. And then when Walker comes back, I would just send down, Sajaci, because he doesn't have the flexibility. And that's clearly their biggest holdup. Now I still have Hampson that can play every outfield position. I still have Hampson that can play every infield position. And now I have Jordan Walker. Now when Herrera comes back, now I can send down Luke and Baker, because then there's another right-handed bat replacement, a better right-handed bat against lefties. I think that's the best way for them to construct the roster moving forward into the All-Star break and potentially until they get Ivan Herrera back.
I think what they would tell you is the problem right now with the flexibility, like why they feel as though they need it, is all of these injuries that they're dealing with. They just don't know day to day who's going to be available, what level of concern there's going to be. Like Nootbaar was available, and then he wasn't suddenly because of this issue that's dealing with it, that he's dealing with in his ribs. So we'll see what they decide to do here. I'm with you. There are some frustrating elements to all of this. I'm giving them a little bit more grace with the roster right now because, man, they've done a lot of the things that we were asking for. Like they brought up Sajaci. Now, finally, about a month and a half later, they're actually cross-training him in the outfield. They are giving Jordan Walker some time down in AAA. They called up the hot bat in Jose Fermin, and he has, been okay, honestly. while he's been up here at the big league level. So some of the things that we've been calling for, they are starting to do. I think they've been really good with their bullpen management this year. They're actually utilizing those final 2 spots with the options. That is something they have not done in previous seasons, and I think it's really helped them just maintain some of the innings, if nothing else. And like now you're starting to see some positive returns from some of those guys. Swanson looks really interesting to me. I like what they've had out of Riley O'Brien. Sounds like Graceffo is throwing 100 down in AAA now as a reliever for the Memphis Redbirds. So you might actually be creating some kind of a legit leverage arm in AAA. Ryan Fernandez, they looked at it and they were like, yeah, that ain't working for us right now. And it's going to take a while for us to get that project back on track. So they haven't called him back up. Chris Roycroft. It's been a minute since we've seen him, man. So they are actually churning through some of these arms in a way that in previous seasons, it took them a long time to get here. So I'll give them a little bit of credit with the roster where it's deserved. It is frustrating to watch right now. I think a lot of that goes back to if Contreras is hitting the way that we know he can and he's healthy, and if Nootbaar is hitting the way that we know he can and he's healthy, and Arenado is hitting the way we know he can and he's healthy, a lot of these issues start to work themselves out. And some of this comes down to like Brendan Donovan has not been the same hitter that he was for the first 2.5 months of the season either. He's going through a little bit of a mini slump as well. All right, so that's the offense. Offensive side of things, it's been up and down, and especially when they go up against lefties, it's been a bit erratic and honestly mostly bad. What did we learn about the entirety of the Cardinals in the month of June? It has come and gone. They finished the month with exactly a 500 record. Man, did they get there in a bass-ackwards way. So we'll talk about that and what we learned about this team in the month of June coming up next on the Redbird Report. All right, T-Bone. So the Cardinals in the month of June were 14-14. That is an exactly 500 record. They were average in that regard. The way that they got to that record, though, is, nothing short of remarkable. So they start off the month of June and they were absolutely horrific. They lose 10 of their first 12 games. They finish the month of June by winning 10 of their last 15 games in the month. And in between, they were second in the league, in the National League, in runs scored. And they had allowed the 5th most runs. How does that happen? Well, the rotation plummeted. They had been mostly okay, and we had been talking about this in the month of May, where I was like, oh man, this rotation's actually decent. Are they going to be able to get away with this thing? Nope. June proved that to be an entirely bad premise. They had a 5.1 ERA as a rotation in the month of June. That was 28th in Major League Baseball. The bullpen, however, was top 10. They had a 3.2 ERA in the month of June, and your defense returned to form. So despite excellent defense, plus 11 and outs above average, second best in all of Major League Baseball for the month, the rotation was still really bad. So this idea that, hey, the defense can prop up the rotation, everything's going to be fine, swing and miss is overrated, we got this, guys. Yeah, that fell flat on its head. The offense was the thing, though, and we talked about this a bit in the open. The offense was just average. It was like 19th in most statistical categories, and there's nothing that I can look at and be like, okay, well, yeah, it was average, but they were unlucky here. They had this part of it, blah, blah, blah. T-Bone, a lot of this comes down to like Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar, the 2 guys that are supposed to get on base for you. They stopped getting on base. They combined to get on base 30% of the time in the month of June. They hit 213 for Brendan Donovan and 170 for Lars Nootbaar. You want to look at what went wrong for the Cardinals offense. Well, this is what you're built upon. You're built upon guys at the top getting on and guys in the middle driving them in. Wilson Contreras was really good. Alec Burleson was really good. Nolan Gorman was really good. Arenado was basically exactly what he's been all season long. Solid average, little bit of pop. But when those guys at the top of your order are not getting on, I'll add Mason Wynn into that category as well. He was under 300 in terms of his on-base percentage. You're not getting the same opportunities with runners in scoring position, and boom, everything changes about this offense.
Yeah. When you don't have any of really your on-base guys getting on, it's very hard for this team specifically.
Yes.
To score because they don't slug. And we've talked about that all year long. And it's what prevents them from putting up crooked numbers on the scoreboard. And you could even see it last night in that Paul Skeens game. Again, we're recording on Wednesday morning. When you don't have home run power or even doubles power, you need 3 hits to score on Paul Skeens. good luck. I mean, good luck getting 3 hits in a game against Paul Skeens. Forget just an inning to try and do that. So, yeah, the fact that all their guys that are kind of their quote-unquote on-base guys kind of fell off the cliff a little bit, it's a lot harder for them offensively. But we saw that, and their pitching, to your point, I mean, pitching-wise, like, they're going to go through a roller coaster. I mean, just this week alone, look at how good their pitching's been, right? They get a complete game from Sonny Gray, 7 innings from Andre Palante, who outduels Paul Skeens, yet then you also add in, like, Eric Fetty got rocked by the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's just how the pitching's going to be. The offense needs to be the one that is kind of stable, and I'm still very high on the offense. I would circle it to Ivan Herrera's injury, but he played most of the month, and that's what makes it tough for me to just say that, hey, that's the reason that you had the inconsistencies. But I think what you can learn from their June, even though it was a wild way to get there, they're still a playoff caliber team, right? They look like your typical wild card team, which is you watch them and there's a 10-game stretch where you go, we are so a playoff team. We're going to add at the deadline. We're gonna fix all our holes, and we're going to get to October. And then there's a 10-game stretch where you go, oh my gosh, we're not going to make the playoffs, sell everything, we suck. Like, that's the Cardinals. They feel like your typical wild card team. They have holes that can be exposed. They have a lack of depth, which we've seen is exposed. And they're going to have months where they're pretty bad like they were in April. They're going to have great months like they were in May. And they're going to end up more in the middle, which is what June was, right at 500.
Can I read you the list of the best records in the National League in the month of June?
Oh, this is probably going to be wild.
Dodgers, that makes sense. 18-10 overall. Milwaukee Brewers, 16-9. You felt that as a Cardinals fan. And then after that, the Arizona Diamondbacks at 16-11, the Cincinnati Reds at 15-11, the Miami Marlins at 15-12, and the Pittsburgh Pirates at 15-13. Then you get to the National League contenders. The Phillies, the Cubs, the Cardinals, the Padres, the Giants, and the Mets were all somewhere between 14-13 and 12-15 in the month of June. None of them did anything to like pull away or to fall out of this thing. They were all basically the same. I mean, the Mets went through a stretch where they had like this players only meeting because they had lost, I think it was 15 out of 17 games. The Phillies, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, just got swept by the Pirates, right? Weren't they the team that, or was it the Mets?
Mets just got swept.
The Phillies went through their swoon in the month of June as well. The Padres, it's like been this weird stretch where they're not hitting. I don't really understand it, but they are not hitting the baseball anymore now. Nobody's pulled away. So it was a frustrating month of June for the Cardinals to a degree. It was a frustrating month for everybody. As you look around, and this is something that I've been pretty big on lately. Yeah, you're not a perfect team, but who in the National League is? I mean, I built up the Padres and the Dodgers and the Phillies and the Mets early on this season because you'd look at the rosters, you'd be like, I mean, how can you possibly compare to these teams? You look at the rotations at best when they're healthy. You look at the middle of their orders when they're healthy. These teams are just better than you. You just cannot possibly compare. And yet you look at the production and it's like, I don't know, man. Could you? Could the Cardinals go into a 3-game series or a 5-game series against some of these teams and you walk out of it and say, they were the better team? I don't know that they're the actual better team, but in a 5-game series, could they be better than any of these teams that we just talked about? Yeah, they could be. So I think the Cardinals, as of today, should fit into that buyer category. And I'm with you. That's what I learned about them. And what I learned about the National League in the month of June is just, it's not as good of a league as we thought it was going to be. The Cardinals are a little better probably than we thought they were going to be. And maybe most importantly, even when you're going through a spell like this, like what we've seen over the last couple of days where the offense is off, the pitching had a terrible day with Eric Fetty, blah, 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 they're going to come out of it because they always have so far this year. Individual games, they find a way to come back. Over the course of a series, they find a way to come back. Over the course of the season, even when they get down and they go through a really bad stretch like at the beginning of the month, man, they battle their way back into this thing. So I'm not willing to give up on them based upon a few bad days or maybe even a bad week. They're probably going to have one in the month of July where everybody wants to say, you know what, it's time to sell, get Ryan Helsley out of here. I don't think that's necessary for this team because of the way that they've proven to us all season long. We can find a way to get back into this thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And to your point on like who are the quote unquote perfect teams in the National League, I think there's only one right now, and I think it'll potentially be two. But the only team right now I would say is probably the Cubs. They're the only one that I look at as kind of, okay, it's hard to see their flaws.
I think they really need to upgrade that rotation.
I think they
will.
I agree. I think they need some rotation help, but like they're getting an all-star performance from Matthew Boyd. Imanaga's still a very good arm for them. Their bullpen could use a little bit of an upgrade, but yeah, I agree. They're going to upgrade. And the other one that I would circle is the Dodgers. But they're more of a, what are they going to do at the deadline? Because they've also got a bunch of starters coming back. So are they going to add, or are they going to gamble on, okay, well, these guys will be healthy, of course, for this final 2 months of the season.
And I'm not ready to say, like, they're for sure getting those starters back.
I agree.
I don't know. Because we've been saying it all year long and we haven't seen it. And so eventually I need to see a little bit of proof of concept on them of, all right, are you actually going to get those starters back, or is it all theoretical? Like, I can theoretically say that Jordan Walker could be that right-handed bat for the Cardinals that they're lacking right now. That does not mean that it will actually happen, and so far it very much has not. But that's kind of the idea of the rotation for the Dodgers right now. They basically have two guys that are throwing innings for them. Yeah. It's Yamamoto and Dustin May, and I don't know how much I can trust those guys either. They've both been pretty good. With Yamamoto, he's been great. But I don't know how long that's going to last. I have no idea.
Yeah, and at some point, I think their bullpen's going to break because they have, I think it's the most bullpen innings thrown so far this season, and they're continuing to use Shohei as an opener until he gets built back up. But
it's unbelievable.
Like, those are the only teams that I would say, and again, the Dodgers are a huge question mark of if they can have the quote-unquote perfect roster when it matters most. Phillies, to me, are flawed. Mets are flawed. I mean, the Mets just lost Griffin Canning, who'd been great for them. Blew his Achilles out. So they're going to need an upgrade. The Brewers, I don't know how they're doing it again. It's some voodoo magic going on in Milwaukee.
Pitching, dude.
It's unbelievable.
They're a pitching pipeline, and it's going to frustrate us to no end for the next decade, but it is what it is. They've got Mizorowski, and that guy's a stud.
And, the Padres are going to buy. Giants are clearly in buy mode, even though the Devers thing has clearly not gone the way that they were expecting so far since he got there. I mean, if you add, all these teams are all right in the same mix of about 90 wins. And then it just comes down to, okay, what do we have? And can I be honest? I kind of want to know the answer on that from these young guys. As much as we want to talk about this season being about runway, I think it's fair to say you've gotten pretty good answers on that as we get to the deadline here as we start July.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
Some of them you haven't gotten the answers that you wanted to get, but you had answers nonetheless. Jordan Walker, for example. I have some answers on where he's at right now in his career. I don't like those answers, 100%. But I have the answers nonetheless.
But as much as we talked about the Blues, saying how important it was for them to get to the playoffs, to find out what you had in some of the young guys, like a Bolduc when they had him, Neighbors, guys like that, Broberg when he got back to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Even if they don't make it, I think it's good to see how this group responds in pressure situations. Even though people may still not be going back to the ballpark, it will be a pressure cooker here in St. Louis because we've seen it. The fan base, though maybe not going to the seats, still very much cares about what the St. Louis Cardinals are doing. And that's why if they are still in this race, you add a couple of reinforcements potentially at the trade deadline. All right, Mason Wynn, let's see what you got when there's some pressure on the line. Okay, Nootbaar, let's see what you got. Victor Scott, I've liked what you've looked like. Okay, now there's some real pressure on you this season. If they decide to trade Fetty out and make Michael McGreevy a star, okay, big boy, let's see what you got. Let's see what you can do for this team. I think they are in a great spot to be buyers at the deadline and get some legitimate questions on, hey, what does it look like in pressure situations for some of the young players?
Last thing on this before we get to the break. When you think about what they need at the deadline, I think most Cardinals fans would put together a pretty similar list, right? You would like to upgrade the rotation if possible. Now, some may say, just get rid of Fetty, put Michael McGreevy into that spot, you've upgraded your rotation. Maybe. I'm not as convinced on that as some others are. I think that you're probably slightly better. I also think that there are some deficiencies there with McGreevy that would probably show up over the long haul, similar to what you have right now with Fetty. That does not mean that I think that McGreevy stinks. It just means he's a young pitcher without a ton of swing and miss stuff. And when you have those guys, we've seen it with Palante, there's ups and downs. And I think the same thing would probably be true for McGreevy. So
in his last two starts.
Exactly. If possible, I think upgrading that spot of the rotation and maintaining McGreevy as the sixth starter, I know people hate the idea of that. I think that would probably be an ideal scenario for the Cardinals if they are truly trying to compete this season. I think they could use another reliever that fits into that like 7th or 8th inning mix. Not an easy thing to acquire, but nonetheless, I think that's something that would be nice for them. And then finally, some kind of a right-handed bat, preferably in the outfield. I think it's basically the same list as what they had last year.
Yeah.
Starter, reliever, right-handed bat, preferably in the outfield. Maybe you just reacquire Tommy Pham.
Oh.
I think that's probably the list. My question to you, T-Bone, can they check any of those things off the rest of the month of July prior to the deadline with somebody internal? Do you think there are options currently on the roster or down in the farm system, whatever it may be, that they could get answers to those questions prior to the deadline to where we actually don't have to trade for this thing. We already have it, and we found that out in the month of July.
So I'll start with the two that I don't think they can. I don't think they can with the right-handed hitter because, though, as much as I just went on a tangent about Luke and Baker being on the roster, I think they need a right-handed outfielder. Baker can solve the here and now, but when you're talking about projecting forward into what they need for the stretch run and in October, it is probably a right-handed bat that can play in the outfield. And I don't think Walker's going to be that guy. There's nothing to prove that he's going to be that guy based on what we've seen. So I don't think they can do that. Starter, I get the argument from people, and I think if there's one they're actually going to do, it's probably this one. I wouldn't do this, but I think it is likely they will trade Fedde and just say, McGreevy's as good as a trade deadline acquisition. And I'm with you. To me, it's going to be a lot like Palante. It's going to be some ups and downs, and I like the stuff. He profiles more as like a 4. He's kind of in the Michaelis/Palante range for me. And for them, they've already got a pretty good 1-2 combo in Gray and Liberatore. They need another guy to be in that top 3. They need a dog, a veteran that when he goes to a bar won't be carded like Michael McGreevy. That's what they need. They need a Merrill Kelly.
Time out.
What?
You're like 14 years old. You're not allowed to say the thing that you just said.
I think I can say that. I get carded at the bar all the time.
They need a dog, somebody that's not going to get carded at the bar. T-Bone, you don't shave.
Merrill Kelly's that guy. I don't know if Michael McGreevy shaves, to be fair.
Probably not.
But I think they're going to need somebody like that. The one I think they might be able to answer internally, and I think it's a big risk, but I think the one they might be able to answer internally is reliever. Because I really like, you mentioned 2 names earlier. I really like what they've seen from Swanson. I've really been impressed with Riley O'Brien, and he's got dynamic stuff to where if it can all click together here in the next couple of weeks, I can see how you convince yourself, okay, our big 3 right-handed arms coming out of our bullpen are going to be Maton, Helsley, and O'Brien. And then from the left side, we've got Matt, who's got decent swing and miss, and JoJo Romero. I think always adding to the relief corps is always a good idea. So, maybe you still do it, but that would be the one that I think they can answer internally.
Can I give you another out that they could potentially have there?
Is it a prospect that might be starting at Memphis?
Yeah.
Is it Tekoa Roby?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been debating the same thing in my head as well.
Eventually, he might run into some kind of an innings situation where they say, you know what? We got what we wanted out of you this year. You stayed healthy the entire season. We're going to reward you by going ahead and giving you this opportunity at the big league level. And for your first taste of the big league level, that's not going to be as a starter. You're going to get an opportunity to come out of the bullpen. He's thrown 68 innings already this season. We're just now approaching the trade deadline. Last season, he threw 38. The year before that, he threw 55. So, you're talking about him reaching the threshold that he's been at over the last couple of years, within the next month.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody that has a hard and firm, you can't possibly go above that. If he feels good, keep throwing. I'm totally cool with that. But I think he could be somebody that fits into this mix. Gordon Graceffo could be somebody that fits into this mix. I liked what we saw, honestly, out of Andre Granillo. If he hadn't thrown 100 pitches over the course of 2 days.
It's quietly going under the radar. I think he's hurt because he left the game in Memphis with some kind of arm issue, and he hasn't pitched. I just looked this up. He hasn't pitched since June 25th. So I think he's quietly hurt, and the Cardinals haven't placed him on the IL yet. I think they're still getting answers on what his issue is.
Cool. Well, I thought he looked good.
Sorry to pee in your Cheerios this morning.
I wonder if that's because he threw 39 pitches over the course of 3 days, or 50 pitches. And one of those he threw literally twice in one day and had a save and a win. It was crazy. I liked what we saw out of him, and hopefully he can come back healthy and he can maybe fit into this mix as well. Either way, we just mentioned 6 names.
Yeah.
And if any of those guys, literally one of them, can fit into your 7th or 8th inning mix, dude, cool. You found an out for that opportunity instead of having to give up prospects to go out and acquire a reliever. So to me, my list, if I'm John Mozeliak, is actually probably just that starter and a right-handed bat. And right-handed bats typically come at a pretty reasonable cost, especially if it's like a corner outfield / DH type. And then that starter is what you have to give up something for. And you have to determine, what am I willing to give up for that? Or do I think it's worth it to just try out what McGreevy is at the big league level? My guess is they go with the latter and they say, you know what, we're going to trade Fetty. We open up this spot in our rotation. We're going to go ahead and give that chance to Michael McGreevy. We'll keep TK Roby down in the minors. He's ready to go as our 6th starter now. We feel good about that. We have more depth than we did at the beginning of the season. We'll go add a right-handed hitter, the likes of which are basically Tommy Pham 2.0. I don't know if it's actually Tommy Pham, but somebody similar to that.
Randall Grichuk is my guy.
And he's probably played for the Cardinals before. That's what they like to do. And then you go about it that way, man. And I say that's fine. This team has earned the opportunity, with where they're at right now, to keep going as they're currently constructed. All right, he's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got the Redbird Report. Coming up next, we'll start projecting forward. The Cardinals have, I think it's like 9 games remaining prior to the trade deadline at the time of this recording. What are we expecting, and what are we worried about over the course of the next 10 days? We'll talk about that next here on the Redbird Report. All right, T-Bone, so we said at the beginning of the show, and we've mentioned this a few different times now, Cardinals are running out of gas. They've got Contreras dealing with a hand issue after getting hit on the hand with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball by Paul Skeens yesterday. That does not sound like something I would enjoy. Arenado hurt his finger in a freak accident as the batting helmet fell off while he was running, and he hurt his finger. He jammed it. He can't hit, can't field right now. Newt is dealing with the rib issue. He got the injection. It seemed like that kind of helped things, and then he had to go back behind the scenes because it didn't help things as much as he hoped that it would. Herrera's been dealing with his hamstring injury, and it feels like some of the other guys, like Fetty had some comments after the game the other day that made it pretty clear like he's dealing with something. I don't know exactly what it is, but he said, I'm good enough to pitch right now. Okay, so you're dealing with something. This team is just running out of gas, and they've got 10 more days remaining prior to this all-star break. How do you feel going into these? You've got 3 against Chicago, 3 against Washington, 3 against Atlanta the rest of the way. It should be a relatively manageable schedule outside of that 3-game set at Wrigley. How, as a Cardinals fan, are you feeling prior to this all-star break?
So originally I was going to say, I feel pretty good, and then I've seen them struggle against the Pirates because of all this nagging stuff that they've got going on. I'm hoping because they've got 2 off days before the break that will really help them. They get off Thursday, and then they get off following the Cubs series for Monday going into Washington, and then the Braves that they host. I think those 2 series, I'll start with first, Washington and Atlanta. I think at minimum they can earn themselves a split. And what I mean by that is go 3-3 in that stretch.
Sure.
I'm fearful. I said this at the time because Alex on BK and Ferrari was frustrated by them splitting with the Cubs at home. And I said, hey, look, I'm happy with the split, even though you started 2-0 and it was ugly in the final 2. I was happy with the split because it just created the to-be-continued storyline for the Cardinals in their 7 games with the Cubs. They are not in great shape going into Chicago. And I fear that will be the series where it kind of becomes, oh, okay, maybe you can't win the NL Central. I don't think that's the biggest thing in the world because I still think they've got a path to the playoffs in the wild card. But I think there will be some overreaction from that Cubs series of, hey, if you drop 2 of 3, it may not look pretty because you just aren't very healthy. I think they're going to drop 2 or 3 to the Chicago Cubs, and it's potentially going to make it look like the NL Central may not be the path for them to the playoffs, that they will have to focus on the NL wild card.
I already feel kind of that way. I think the Cubs are, I think because of expectations coming into the season, it can throw us out of whack on who the actual good teams are based on the performance this season, right? We take a really long time to adjust on these things. Like right now, the Tampa Bay Rays are a legitimately good baseball team. Nobody saw that coming into the season, and so people are kind of slow to the trigger. The Detroit Tigers, one of the best teams in Major League Baseball from day one until where we are today. But it feels like people are still talking about Houston, New York, other teams with bigger stars as being better than them. Okay, maybe they are. But based on the production that we've seen on the field so far this year, the best team out of that bunch is the Detroit Tigers. The reason that I bring this up, the same thing is true in the National League, where the Cubs are 50-35. So I need to start viewing them the way that I'm looking at the Dodgers and the Phillies and the Mets and the Padres, because they're in that category, man. They're playing as well as these other teams. So to me, and in some ways better than many of those teams that I just mentioned, I think the wild card is you're out if you're the Cardinals. I think the Cubs are going to be hyper aggressive at this year's deadline. And so I'm really more comparing the Cards to Mets, Padres, Giants, Brewers. Those to me are your peer teams. And it just comes down to like how you compare against those teams. I don't know yet. I don't know is the honest to God answer. But if you split these games, if you go 5-4, 4-5 over the next 9, it's not going to feel good. I think that's kind of a success for this team down the stretch leading into the All-Star break. And then you just got to take care of business. The second half of your schedule opens up a little bit. You do have a couple of series against the San Diego Padres coming out of the break. So we'll see how you stack up against them. And then you go up, you have this stretch like starting in August right after the deadline. San Diego, LA, Chicago. Boy, we are about to find out what this team is made of in the month of August. But prior to that, dude, Arizona, Colorado, Miami, it could be a hell of a lot worse coming out of the All-Star break, and you should be rested at that point in time. Hopefully you're a little bit healthier. I think this team's in pretty decent shape. These injuries make me ask one more question before we get out of here today. I think you can make a pretty strong case that like Ivan Herrera is among the most irreplaceable players on this team this year, given what he brings to the plate, given the fact that he's a right-handed hitter who mashes lefties, and he's good against right-handed pitchers as well. There's just not many guys on this team that profile that way. We always do this on our show, BK and Ferrario, before the season, 20 most important Cardinals leading into the season. If you had to rank right now your 5 most irreplaceable Cardinals, it could be active or currently on the injured list, but just the 5 most irreplaceable Cardinals on the 2025 team, how would you rank those guys? Because I think it's an interesting list to make right now.
So I think the top 4, and we'll see if we agree on this. To me, the top 4, I think is easy. I think it's the 5th one that's hard for me.
Okay.
Number 1 for me is Sonny Gray.
Agreed.
They don't have a guy that's going to replace what Sonny Gray does. I mean, look at what he did in Cleveland in that complete game. He has a home run issue at times, but overall, his stuff's filthy. He's clearly a number 1. I think number 2, and it's funny he's number 2, I still think it's Ryan Helsley. I don't think you have another guy that can be a closer on this team.
I didn't have him in my top 5.
Interesting, because I thought he was an easy lock into the top 4.
Wow, okay. I had him as an honorable mention. I have him like right on the outside, but go ahead.
And the reason that I have him there, and look, I get it, his fastball still is a problem. I think they're going to be able to fix that. And if they do, even without the fastball, he's still got some of the best stuff on the team. He's a dominant right-handed closer, and to me, they don't have another guy that fits that. That's why when people talk about the Cardinals should do the Tigers model, which is trade all your best assets and let the kids run. Okay, I could get that with the Fetty side. To me, you don't have a replacement for Ryan Helsley. So he's number 2. I think number 3 is Ivan Herrera. And I think it's because, I mean, look at what the offense is against lefties without him. Look at what the offense is in general without him. When he's been injured, their offense is middle of the pack. When he's healthy, they're like 10 to 13-ish.
I also had him in my top 4.
My 4th one, and this is a hell of a run for him, is Matthew Liberatore. I don't think they've got a guy that... Right now, if he went down, they don't have a guy that would profile as kind of a 1-2 combo with Sonny Gray. So I put him at number 4 on my list because his stuff pitch is like a top 3 starter for a contending team. You didn't have him in your top 5?
This is fascinating. No.
Okay, interesting. Because I thought those 4 were the locks. And then the 5th one that I have, I think, is Brendan Donovan. And I think there's a fair argument because the other guy I really considered here, the other 2 were Scott and Wynn because of what they provide with their defense. And Scott, like, Gold Glove defense in center, quietly gets on base better than people think, even though he hits 9. And I mentioned this the other day on BK and Ferrario. Who's the last Cardinal that when he got on base, he went, okay, that guy's stealing second, and you can't do anything about it. So they were my honorable mentions. I think Donnie's 5 because of the leadership he brings in the locker room. He's their all-star, and he's got flexibility in whatever position that he can play.
I had Sonny 1. Agree with you completely there. Ivan Herrera would be my 2nd most irreplaceable Cardinal in 2025.
I can see how you get there, yeah.
I had Wilson Contreras at 3. I think you're severely underestimating the offense that Contreras has provided to this team. Contreras is one of the very few bats that basically since the 3rd week of the season, I know exactly what that guy's going to be. That guy's going to bat 270. He's going to get on base at a pretty good clip. He's going to hit for a little bit of power. And he's going to play not quite Gold Glove caliber defense at first, but pretty darn close to it. He's been excellent defensively for them so far this year. So Contreras to me would be third. I just don't know who else you have on this roster that can profile that way offensively. Fourth on my list was Brendan Donovan. Totally agree with everything you just said there. Fifth on my list is Mason Wynn. All of the things that you said about Victor Scott, apply those to the shortstop position and now assume, okay, who am I having play there?
Yeah.
Who is playing shortstop for this team over a 50-game stretch if Mason Wynn goes down? Genuinely don't know the answer. Is it JJ Weatherholtz? Like, I'm truly asking. I don't know who their answer would be at the shortstop position if they, like, if tomorrow, and knock on, I don't even want to say it, but if something happened,
oh no,
and you played the rest of the year,
BKO powers
without Mason Wynn, I don't know what their answer is. So to me, that is a guy that is completely irreplaceable. You look at any of the metrics, he's one of the best defenders in baseball, regardless of position. You look at the outs above average for the Cardinals this season. We've talked about it before, how they're like on a historic pace. They're still number one in Major League Baseball in the season. And almost all of that is coming from what they're doing infield-wise this season. Wynn is a huge part of that. So that's my top five. Sonny, Herrera, Contreras, Donovan, Wynn. And then my honorable mentions, I did have Helsley, I did have Libby, and then I had another one that nobody would have on their list, Pedro Paez.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought him up because I didn't mention him in my honorable mentions. But like when you were talking about the Wynn, the Scott, like if you lose them, what do you do? They would have fillers at the catcher position. But you look at what the team ERAs are from Paez to Pozo and Herrera. I mean, I think it is fair to say the Cardinals would probably panic if Pedro Paez got hurt. So I'm glad you mentioned him because I think he would fall in the top 10 right now in terms of most important Cardinals.
Yeah, it's crazy. I never in a million years thought in the year of our Lord 2025, Pedro Paez would be among my 10 most irreplaceable Cardinals. It's been a weird year, man.
Like 2 weeks ago, I sat in this chair, and you told me Pedro Paez is part of the core, and I went, no bleeping way Pedro Paez is part of the core. To only think about it and stew on it for 24 hours to go, holy crap, he's probably right. He is a part of the core.
He probably is. All right, that's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone, before we have another show next week, Cardinals will have played 3 at Chicago and 2 against the Washington Nationals. In those 5 games, what are you expecting them to do?
I think they will drop 2 or 3 to the Cubs because of just what we've talked about. They are running on fumes. And I think that I'll just bet on they take the first 2 against Washington.
So one of those against a lefty, Mackenzie Gore. Just a heads up.
Never mind. Okay, they'll split with Washington in those 2 games. So they will be, what would that be, 2 and 3 in the 5 games prior to our next show.
That's what I've got as well. I think they go 2 and 3 in the 5 games prior to our next show. Looking forward to it. Hopefully they go 3 and 2, or maybe even better than that.
5-0.
Looking forward to talking to you guys next week here on the Redbird Report. It is always a pleasure. By the way, thanks to all of you that tuned in to our interview with Rob Cerfolio. I'm sure some of you, it was probably your first time ever watching the show. So if you made it this far, welcome back. Appreciate you being a part of the Redbird Report. For Tanner Hendrickson, who always does a fantastic job, Zane, who helps us out with the video component of things, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys next week on the Redbird Report.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.